This is the mission history for the fourth week of November, as told by Pastor James Huang. Alright, so today we are diving into the incredible story of John Wesley, a true giant of faith whose relentless journey forged a movement that honestly changed the world.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the world he was born into, a light in a dark era. Then we'll look at his time at Oxford with the Holy Club. After that, a huge missionary's turning point. We'll see him become an evangelist on horseback. And finally, we'll wrap up with his incredible legacy, summed up as, "The world is my parish."
Okay, first up, a light in a dark era. You know, to really get who John Wesley was, you first have to understand the world that made him.
So, picture this. 18th century England was, well, it was a mess. You've got the Industrial Revolution kicking off, causing all this social chaos. People were feeling totally lost, totally disconnected. And the church? A lot of the time, it just felt cold and formal. It was the perfect storm, really, for someone with a message of real, personal, heartfelt faith to come along.
And that someone was John Wesley, born in 1703. And get this, his dad was a pastor, and his grandfather was a pastor. I mean, faith was literally in his blood. This lineage wasn't just his background, it was basically the roadmap for his entire life.
And when we say family, we mean family. He was the 15th of 19 kids. Can you even imagine? And his mother, Susanna, she was the one who provided this intense spiritual guidance. Her super disciplined, methodical way of teaching faith, it stuck with him for life. A huge, huge impact.
Okay, so that upbringing naturally led him to Oxford University in 1720. And this is where his search for a deeper faith really kicks into high gear. He was not a guy who was happy just checking the boxes. He looked around and just wasn't satisfied with the kind of faith he was seeing. It felt so formal, so detached. So what does he do? He gets together with a few guys, including his brother Charles, and they form what they call the Holy Club. You have to understand this was a pretty radical idea back then. They weren't just showing up for services. No, they were going all in on a life of absolute devotion.
Now this really came to a head in 1725 in what's known as his Oxford conversion. He basically made a promise to himself and to God saying, "From now on I will live a holy life without blemish." It was a serious, solemn vow, a real line in the sand.
And here's a fun little piece of history. The name Methodist, the name for a whole global movement, it actually started as an insult. Yeah, other students made fun of them for being so methodical, so rule-based. But Wesley and his friends, they just owned it. They took this name that was meant to be an insult and turned it into a badge of honor. I love that.
But all this structure, all this discipline, it was about to face the ultimate test, something he never saw coming. In 1735, he and his brother Charles get on a ship headed for North America to be missionaries. And this wasn't some weekend cruise. We're talking 57 days across the Atlantic, a grueling trip. And something happened on that boat that would absolutely shatter his spiritual confidence and change everything for him. So, a massive, terrifying storm hits the ship. And Wesley, he's gripped with fear, pure terror. I mean, this is the guy who started the Holy Club, and he's scared to death. But then he sees this group of Moravian missionaries. The ship is being thrown around, and what are they doing? They're calm, they're singing hymns, they have this unshakable peace. The contrast was just jarring. That moment just broke him open. It forced him to ask this really hard question about himself. If these people have a faith that conquers the fear of death, what in the world is my faith? He had this sudden, awful realization that his religion was all in his head. It was about rules and logic, but it wasn't in his heart. That whole crisis of faith led him straight to this pivotal moment, what we now call the Aldersgate experience. It was May 24th, 1738. He's at a small meeting, and then it happens. He described it as his heart being strangely warmed. For the first time, it wasn't just an idea. He felt this deep, personal assurance of his salvation. And that experience? It was the real turning point. It completely transformed him. Before, he was a man searching for faith. After Aldersgate, he was a man who had to proclaim it. That fire in his heart wasn't something he could keep to himself anymore.
So from that moment on until he died in 1791, John Wesley basically became an evangelist on horseback. I mean, the man was relentless. He traveled thousands upon thousands of miles, spent almost half his life on the road, just preaching the gospel to anyone and everyone. His entire life just became this nonstop mission. And on March 2nd, 1791, around 10 in the morning,
that incredible journey finally came to a close. His last words were simple: farewell. A perfect end to a life that was completely given over to his calling.
So, how do you sum up a life like that? Well, his whole mission is maybe best captured by the powerful words that are actually etched on his tombstone.
The world is my parish. Just think about that for a second. It perfectly captures his vision, right? For him, ministry wasn't something that happened inside four walls. There were no borders, no limits. The entire world, that was his church. Pastor James Wong is a researcher of Korean mission history who now serves in Maryland, USA, after his work as a missionary in China. He shares a weekly message from his book, Remember and Repay, 52 Weeks of Mission Meditation.